Hello and welcome to Violent Money's preview for UFC London. It is an incredible card full of some great UK fighters that hopefully will live up to the last one. Second London card of the year for us. Did you guys think that there was... I know that Dana said that we're going to come back. Did you think it would be this soon? Because I was like, maybe we'll get one November or something like that. But
I think you've always got to be wary of what Dana says, especially when it comes to them coming back to the UK. In recent years, it's been once a year, and obviously COVID happened, which scuppered two cards. But I am buzzing that it's back because, like you said, it is a phenomenal card again.
Weird to think as well that we would get a second. I thought if we were going to get a second one, it would have Leon.
Yeah,
which is weird, right? To get two Aspinall ones in the same year.
I think that was the plan originally. We were going to get Usman versus Edwards for the title in London, but they wanted to push that back to a pay-per-view.
Man, if only.
If only.
Yeah.
That would have been incredible. I would have there's no way I would have been missing that. I would have been in London this weekend for that.
I would have snuck in if I had to.
Yeah.
See Leon fight for the title.
Boys, I'm flying over. Flying over if Leon's fighting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hopefully they haven't repaired that gap in the top of the O2 from the storm. You can just creep through there.
Yeah, that is a good shout.
The arena's going to be... Boys, the arena's going to be melted by the time everyone gets there.
Oh, man. I did actually look at the forecast, and I think it's kind of the weather is slowing down a bit towards the end of the week, thankfully.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But obviously, we can talk about Leon Edwards fighting for the belt all day, which I'm sure we will when it comes around. But we're going to start the card off a couple of fights into the actual event with another Birmingham native, Jai Herbert, taking on Kyle Nelson. Jai Herbert has had... I don't know how many times it has to be said about him only fighting killers in the UFC. I was so incredibly hyped when he had an incredible first round against Ilia Topuria, which was devastating to see him lose. It feels like he's nearly there, right? Like,
yeah.
Those fights, he seems to be winning them, and then something happens that takes the fight away from him. Do you guys think that this fight against Kyle Nelson will be a similar story, or a time for him to finally get... Well, I say finally get... He already got an impressive win under his UFC belt, but I think this one might be another win.
Yeah, I expect so. Kyle Nelson is a good fighter. He's a good stand-up fighter, but I think Jai's just got too much for him. I think that he's going to have to use his counter shots pretty well in this fight. Kyle Nelson is someone that likes to push forward. But, will Jai be able to take a couple of hits to the chin that we saw the last fight? Obviously, it didn't go to plan with the Topuria knockout. But I think he'll be able to get it done. I do.
I think people are slightly underrating Kyle Nelson because he's been out for a little while. If I'm remembering correctly, he fought Nicholas Dalby on I think it was a Fight Island card. I'm gonna check out, but if it is him, I'm thinking of, this guy is dangerous because he knocked Nicholas Dalby out, and Nicholas Dalby, he's someone who's fighting on this card. He's pretty dangerous. Now, obviously, that fight was overturned. Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm looking at the wrong guy. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, what was the guy that beat Dalby? That's got my brain.
It was something Nelson. It was something Nelson.
Let me just look that up real quick.
Okay. I know
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I know who we're talking about now. This is slightly right. Yeah. I remember this guy from when he fought Billy Quarantillo again about 2 years ago. And it was a good back and forth fight. As Jamie said, he likes to go forward. But I do feel like this is a bit of a layup matchup for Jai. It won't be easy. And considering the fact that we have seen Jai been put down like twice in his UFC career now, and the fight with Mokaev as well, where he was taken down and held down, he hasn't had the best tenure, but I don't think that reflects his talent. He is very, very talented, and it's shown in his fights. They have been competitive. Look at the fight with Trinaldo. That was very competitive, and he was on his way to winning the decision. He got caught. He nearly knocked Ilia Topuria out, and then got knocked out. So as long as he's able to keep his guard up in this fight, I think it should be a win for him.
Yeah, I think so. I think Jai, out of all, when we look at predictions and stuff like that, I remember for the last card, we were like, everyone was getting carried away. Clean sweep for the Brits and all that. I think Jai is one of the ones I am most confident about, to be honest. Like, Carl Nelson's a good opponent, but he's lived with some real top lightweights. I mean, Topuria says it all, man. Like, that fight was on a knife's edge. So
Topuria is someone that not a lot of fighters want to fight as well.
no,
Obviously, he was at featherweight and then moved up for the Herbert fight, but even still, like, he's a very, very good prospect that not a lot of people are putting their names in the hat to fight.
absolutely. I mean, you mentioned it there, a top prospect, and we go to maybe the biggest prospect in MMA right now, Mokaev, who for UK fans have been hearing about long before he debuted as a pro. An incredible amateur career, undefeated, 6-0 now as a pro. Incredible debut last time out of London. Gets a bit of a higher spot, bit of a tougher opponent. Well, is it a tougher opponent? Charles Johnson
I
has
think
got an
so.
impressive LFA resume.
Yeah.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, Charles Johnson has fought a very good list of fighters at LFA. Obviously, he's coming in for his debut against one of the, like you just said, Carl, one of the biggest prospects in MMA, regardless of the weight class. So it is a huge step for Charles Johnson as well. But you can't look past Mokaev, can you? You really can't.
No.
It's just impossible to.
It really is, because you're not just looking at his pro career where he has beaten everybody he's come across through his career in Brave and now into the UFC. You need to look at his amateur record. And you see people say, well, the amateurs are not the same, and some of these guys are just kids and all that kind of stuff. You need to watch his fights in the amateurs. You need to understand how well-rounded this guy is. I remember 3 years ago only finding out about this guy, and he still had undefeated double-digit amateur career. And I kept my eye on him because I remember Cauley told us, you got to keep your eye on this guy because he is going places. And I thought that was just another Cauley moment trying to hype up an English guy. But I went and I watched his fights and I wrote a couple of pieces about him. He's elite. And I do rate Charles Johnson as an opponent because he's fought the best that LFA has to offer. And I think he will go on to have a good UFC career after this. But I'm giving this one to Mokaev. Regardless of how you feel about their little social media antics and all that kind of stuff, you cannot deny that Muhammad Mokaev, he's the future of 125. I think if he wins on Saturday and then he goes on to win another fight before the end of the year, we're looking at top 10 in 2023. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. That sequence to finish Cody Durden is still like one of the most beautiful, like, just little snips of MMA to just be like, for someone who thinks MMA is real brutal and stuff, just to be like, watch this technique. I think incredible.
Another thing about it though is that he's only 21 years old. Like, he is literally younger than me, and I'm only 23, and I feel young. The fact that he's gone in on his debut at UFC London and done that and kind of held his own on such a big stage, it's just like, it's scary that someone can be that like confident and calm.
Absolutely ridiculous. We go from talking about two Brits that I'm sure we're all incredibly excited to watch to one of the fights that doesn't involve any Brits. I suppose Makwana Miyakani at this point is kind of like an adopted Brit, because he always seems to be on these cards and obviously trains at SBG. Does he still train in Dublin?
I think he does. Yeah, he's still training with John Cavan and the guys up in SPG. So I'll accept him as one of the Irish. I've always had a soft spot for him. So yeah, you know what, Miyakani, welcome to the team. It's a pleasure to have you with us, because Miyakani is one of those guys who early in his career had a lot of promise, and then once he hit the top 15 and he started fighting those kind of guys, you started to realize maybe he wasn't as good as you thought, or that there were holes in his game that guys were kind of going to easily exploit. And he was starting to have these really competitive fights, or fights he would lose. But in his last fight, which was at UFC London as well, he got a really, really quick submission. And I think it's going to do wonders for his confidence, because, when you're so inconsistent for a while, you end up becoming the kind of journeyman mindset where you just want to go in, you want to fight, you want to just kind of get through it, and if you win, you win. I think on such a big card, he got that win. He was one of the highlights of that card. I know he got overshadowed by all of the amazing fights that happened at London, but if you go back and watch that was a brilliant submission that he got. So I think he's going to be riding high coming into this, and the kind of hype jobs that SBG can do on fighters. So if Makwan is on form, I think he could be looking at another submission win. He's got one of the most underrated ground games at 145, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll see it going a similar way than that the Grundy fight went as well, because it's like you said, he's one of those fighters that's inconsistent, but once you get that big win like his last fight was, especially against someone that's kind of a fan favorite in the UK in Mike Grundy, I think it just does wonders for what his confidence will be coming into this next one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He seems to me like a very confidence-based fighter. You can tell his worst performances have always come when someone takes that confidence away from him. So we should get the best version of Makwana Miyakani, and we know that that's a very scary prospect. It's just whether that version shows up or not. But yeah, it'll be a good fight. I think that one will probably go under the radar for a lot of people, similar to the way that his last fight with Mike Grundy did on that card. But it'll be a good one. I'm talking obviously about the last London card. One of the fighters who unfortunately missed out that time around was Nathaniel Wood. Absolutely gutted to see him drop off the card at such late notice as well. Devastating. So I was so excited to see what he looked like at featherweight as well. But finally, he gets his chance to try and prove it to everyone in London, fight in front of his home crowd. Charles Rosa, a good opponent who... I don't know how you guys feel about Charles Rosa, but I felt like he would go on to do really good things in the UFC, and it's kind of like stopped and stalled so far.
Yeah,
for
it's
him.
kind of been like an anticlimactic kind of pursuit since his debut. But it is going to be very, very interesting to see how Nathaniel Wood does look at 145. Because obviously he's moved up a division purely on the basis that he thinks it might be better for him to get more fights in. But is it going to be something that benefits him in the long run? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's the huge talking point, right? For this fight is none of us know. Obviously, you've got to respect Charles Rosa, but the main talking point for the British fans at least will be, what does Nathaniel Wood look like at this weight class?
I think it's a Go on, sorry, Joe.
No, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I think it's a move that is, I mean, on the face of it, it is a good move on the short term, because he was struggling to find a fight at 135, and the move up, it can't do him terribly, because it's not as if he's cutting more weight, he's going up a weight class, so it's not going to be like massively detrimental to his career, but I just don't know whether it'll be somewhere that he kind of finds a home.
Yeah, I think it's a really fair point, because in the short term it's going to do better for his career, and I do see him getting past Charles Rosa. I expected big things from Rosa earlier on in his UFC career, because his only real losses were to Shane Burgos, Bryce Mitchell, who have they're staples of the top 15 now. But he's just kind of meddled out, and he's losing fights that he should be winning. So I don't like to say that it's a layup fight really, but Wood has been out for nearly 2 years since he lost to Casey Kenny. Did he really? I don't think he did. I thought he beat Casey Kenny pretty clearly, and that fight was at 140. So we've seen him halfway up to featherweight, and he looked pretty impressive. So I think short term this is going to do well for him. I think he's going to have a little bit more power. I think he'll retain his speed like a lot of guys do going up in weight. But as to whether or not he can really find a home at 145, because we've seen 145 lately, those are some dangerous people. So look, I'm rooting for Nathaniel Wood, and I'm rooting for him. I hope he does find a home at 145, but at least this weekend, I think he does get the win. And if you're betting on this card, I think Nathaniel Wood is a pretty safe bet. Even, Muhammad Mokaev, it feels like he's kind of guaranteed to win. There's always the upset factor. And who else were we talking about just at the start of the show? Jai, yeah, as well. See, even though I think Jai is going to win, there's still the chance he gets knocked out. you know. So I think if you're looking for a very, very safe, solid pick here, go with Nathaniel Wood by decision, because he has one of those styles. He's very good with his leg kicks. He knows when to throw them. Yeah, he's always working on his grappling. Just a really solid fighter, and I think that without the cut down to 135 now, I think he's going to be a lot better.
One of the fights that, compared to the ones we were just talking about, that I find pretty hard to pick is up next, which is Mark Casey versus Damir Hadzovic. I think they're pretty well matched. I think that'll be a competitive fight. Obviously, I'm going to lean towards Mark because I want to see him get the win. But what do you guys make of that one? Mark Casey's career is the, like, for me in the UK, it is the prime example of something that I thought would explode and instead has kind of gone 2 steps forward, 1 step back, another step back, step forward. It has been so stop and start for him. So I'm fingers crossed that Mark picks up a win and gets some momentum here, especially in front of the London crowd.
I think with a fighter like Mark, it's always difficult because he's such an exciting fighter, and he throws these spectacular kicks and that sort of thing. That with a fighter like that, it's always the risk that it's not going to go your way because you're not sticking to the basics, or you're trying to overcomplicate things, which I think has been a kind of a running theme throughout his UFC career. But if you look at his last win against Boryshev, it was a good win. And then the losses before then, Fiziev, who's not losing to Fiziev right now, he's one of the best fighters across all weight classes. So it is a favourable matchup for Jacasey, I think. The one coming up.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And given that we've seen Hadzovic lose on the ground as well, and we just saw Jacasey go out and put on a wrestling clinic, which was like the most unlikely outcome in that fight, because everyone thought Boryshev that he was just going to go out and he was going to do what he was doing to people on the Contender Series and in his debut, and Jacasey just completely shut him down. Not the most fun fight to watch in the world, and I don't think now that he's back in London he's going to put on that kind of fight, but I think that was such a dominant display of wrestling. That's a new wrinkle for Mark Casey. People are worried about the striking. They're worried about the power, like when he knocked out Timu Pakalin. They're worried about that kind of thing. They saw how he got submitted by Dan Hooker, who's not really a fantastic submission artist. And they thought, well, he's a flashy striker with a bad ground game. We've seen this 100 times over. But we've really seen now that this guy can wrestle when he wants to. And I think it's going to make it a very difficult fight. I'm going to lean with Mark Casey, which could be a very, very bad move because, as you were both saying, he kind of takes one big step forward and then goes back 5. You know what I mean? Like it can be very difficult sometimes. And I'm not confident, but I'm gonna go with Mark Casey. Probably a decision. I think he's gonna wrestle for at least 1 round. The crowd's gonna boo, then he's gonna strike.
Yeah. I would have to agree with that as well. By decision. I can't see him finishing Hadzovic. I don't know why, because Jacasey is a very good striker, but we just don't know what sort of Jacasey is going to turn up now, do we? Whether it's going to be the grappling side of him or the striking side. So it's a hard one to say. I think he'll knock him out because I don't think he will.
Mm. Yeah, I feel a lot more confident picking Mark Jacasey after that last performance, but I'm also cautious that maybe Boryshev has quite a big weakness in his game, which obviously that's not taken away from Mark. Full credit to him for exploiting that, but I don't know how easy it's going to be for him to implement that to someone like Damir Hadzovic, who has been beaten before on the ground, but we're talking about the Renato Moicanos of this world and people like that, like, elite tier people. Yeah. We've gone from complete opposite ends of the spectrum, in my opinion, for the momentum of the night and the crowd. I think the Mark Jacasey versus Hadzovic fight is going to be very closely contested, and the crowd's going to be a little bit like, can we speed things up a bit? Enter Mason Jones at last minute. I've never seen him in a fight which isn't just a brawl at some point. It always turns into that late notice replacement as well. I am so happy that Mason Jones got onto this card because I really thought he was going to miss out on fighting in the UK this year. So I'm just happy to see him on here, but it's a tough fight.
Especially at late notice as well. That's the thing. there's a risk versus reward with these late notice fights, as obvious as it sounds. But when it's kind of you're fighting in London for the second London card of the year, you can't turn down an opportunity like that, no matter how tough the opponent is or how late notice it is. And if he wins, it will be a massive step in his career.
100%. And this isn't an easy fight either. It's not like, hey, Mason, we know you've been out for a little while. We couldn't get you on the first London card. We'll just give you a can and you can go, you can win. We'll give you a top 15 opponent in a couple of fights. Klein is a dangerous fighter. He has some pretty good wins in his UFC career so far, and he's really fun to watch. He is going to bring this fight, and I think that's the kind of fight Mason Jones loves. I mean, look at his debut. Yeah, look at his debut, man. That was one of the best fights of 2021, and definitely one of the most underrated in recent memory. And it's not just that Mason Jones is super exciting. He is very, very talented. So obviously I'm going to root for Mason Jones because I feel like I have to, but I would not feel confident putting a bet on him because Klein is dangerous. He could make this a bit of an upset. I really don't know whose skill I favor in this, but I do feel like it's going to be one of those cards where just the momentum of the card you're on kind of pushes you through to the decision. That's a nice way of saying that you English judges are atrocious. And I am sick of pretending you're not. You are the worst. Maybe Texas is pretty bad. Texas always has a stinker. But English judges, I have a problem with you. So I'm going to say Mason Jones by slightly controversial unanimous decision.
I think for the UK-based fighters, it's always a kind of like, it's in their head that if they've not had the best fight and it's kind of like a close fight, they know that if they get it to a decision, they're probably going to get the nod.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't be the case, obviously, but
no,
that is.
I agree. I think this is a really tough fight for Mason. Obviously I'm gonna pick him anyway, but the thing that gives me a little bit of confidence that it is a late notice replacement against a tough opponent is I feel like that's when he's performed best in the past. Like I remember I thought that him versus Joe McColgan in Cage Warriors was a really close matchup on paper, and the weird circumstances that it happened in with no fans just as the pandemic hit, and it was maybe his best performance I've seen from him. And the fight that his one, proper, the Alan Patrick one, controversial. His first proper win in the UFC, that last one against David Onama, looks like it's going to pay dividends for him in the future because David Onama looks like a prospect as well.
Yeah.
He looks really good.
Yeah.
That fight is guaranteed to be a banger, and that is why it is the final prelim of the night. And then we go to, I think, one of the most underappreciated fighters in the UFC, because Scotland's Paul Craig, again, never in a dull fight. He's either getting knocked out, he's choking someone out, and it's always going to be something crazy that you've not seen before. So I am so happy that he has got this matchup, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on Volkan Oezdemir at the same time. He's got 2 losses on his career recently, but we're talking Jiří Procházka, the light heavyweight champion of the world, and Magomed Ankalaev, who I would probably say most people think will be the next light heavyweight champion of the world. Where do you guys lie on this? Because I want to get so excited about Paul Craig's big moment, but I am really cautious of Volkan Oezdemir spoiling it.
So I was one of these fans that after his last performance at UFC London just gone, with such a kind of big win, and it was a bit of a comeback if we're being honest. The first round wasn't going his way. For him to then just, like he does, throw up the triangle and get the win. I was kind of expecting him to get a higher ranked opponent. And I know that might sound a bit bizarre, but I'm just not sure. Oezdemir is kind of, like you've said, his last 2 losses have come against absolute warriors in Ankalaev and Procházka. So it's hard to say that he's not an elite fighter because he is. But I just don't, I think I was hoping for a bigger step than that.
Yeah, I would agree with you in the way that how much does it, I guess it's tough to measure, but how much does
a win over Oezdemir do? What does it do for him?
Compared to a win over Krylov, which he already got last time out. I suppose the way that, if you want to, put a positive spin on it, the Krylov one, which I think was kind of got buried under a lot of the stuff that happened after on that London card, which was unfortunate because it was insane that he pulled that off against someone as good as Krylov. But also, I don't know how much weight this holds, but Volkan Oezdemir is a former title contender, which seems like a crazy thing to even think about now.
He's still towards the top of the division as well, which is, it's not as if he's just fighting someone at the bottom of the rankings. He is still towards, is he rank 8? If
Number
I'm not...
10 he's listed as on Tapology. 10. Yeah, right. Which is 3 below Paul Craig, which is why it feels a little bit...
That's why it feels a bit strange, but...
Yeah, Volkan Oezdemir, he's one of the most interesting guys to look at 205 pounds because he had such an odd start to his UFC career. I think his debut was like a short notice fight against OSP, who was a top 10 contender. Then he went in, won a fairly uneventful decision, took his top 10 spot, then sparked out Serkinov on the undercard of I think that was in Sweden. Then he went in a couple of months after that. He shoved Jimmy Manuwa into unconsciousness and became like a top 5 contender. Then got a title shot because of all the strange goings on at 205 at the time with John Jones and metabolites and whatever. Got schooled by DC because he clearly didn't deserve to be there. Like he had his run to title contention, in hindsight, not that fantastic. But to be fair, he has only lost to some of the best in the division. DC, he's a Hall of Famer, and he was one of the greatest champions that 205 ever saw, skill-wise. Then Rakic. Oh wait, no, he beat Rakic.
Dominic Reyes at UFC London 2019, which was it was quite controversial. It wasn't a clear win.
Yeah, I had Oezdemir winning that one.
Yeah, so did I
personally. And Reyes went on to go challenge for the title as well. And I know he's fallen on hard times lately as well, but we all know how good Dominic Reyes is. And it was it was controversial as well. Then Prohashka, who's gone on to show that he's the best light heavyweight on the planet right now, and Ankalaev, who a lot of people are very, very high on. Like, I don't think it's fair to just say Oezdemir, and it's another layout matchup for Paul Craig. He's gonna go in, he's gonna take him down, he's gonna submit him, or he's gonna get knocked down, he's gonna submit him, something like that. But at the same time, I think we need to be reasonable here that Oezdemir is not the challenge Paul Craig should be getting. I was kind of in the same boat as you, Jamie. Like it's really weird that he went out and he made a statement against Krylov, and he was like, these guys in the lower part of the top 10 can't hang with me. Same thing with his win over Jamal Hill, who was meant to be the next big thing and still looks like the next big thing. Like you were saying, Carl, with the Mason Jones win over David Onama, that one is going to pay dividends in the future because Jamal Hill he's the future. But Paul Craig went out and made his arm go, dead fish. So, why are we not talking about Paul Craig as a legitimate title contender? I wanted to see him versus Anthony Smith. I think that was the fight you called for.
Yeah,
that would have been a brilliant fight to see.
I think another thing that makes it kind of a bit iffy is that Paul Craig has come out recently and said that he's not going to be sticking around for much longer, whether he's kind of going back on that or not. But he does have a legitimate kind of hope to become a champion. Like it wouldn't be far-fetched to say that he could become a champion. And at this stage of his career, where he's kind of already considered retirement in the next couple of years, you think that matchups kind of have to really push him forward from here on out. And I just don't know whether a win over Oezdemir would do that for him. I really don't.
No, I can see if he beats Oezdemir here, unless it's like an insane knockout or submission, which, I mean, given Paul Craig, it probably will be if he does win. I can see him fighting the loser of Ankalaev and Anthony Smith, which is only in a week or so, right after this.
Yeah, it's quite close, but
I can see that being made, which that feels like he should have had that fight here anyway. So it's a bit baffling, that one, but still excited to see Paul Craig. So the light heavyweight matchup, I think, is going to be great, but the party really starts with Molly McCann. Everyone knows it. I feel like the opponents, until we get to really, really top fights, I don't feel like the opponents are that important with a Molly McCann fight. Obviously, depending on which way it's going to go, sure. but you know what you're going to get regardless from Molly. There's never any difference in there, and so you've got to be excited. It's where the party starts. Jamie, I am so jealous that I am not going to be there for this, because London now knows how much Molly brings the party.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who she fought at UFC London in 2019, but I remember it was a war as well, and I think that was the fight where her eye completely blew up.
Yeah.
And that fight was like an absolute war that just shown that even the US based fans who might not have seen much of her what she's about. And then she's obviously had a couple of fights since then that have all been wars as well. And then that last fight at UFC London that ended in possibly one of the best knockouts of the year. How can you not be excited to see her fight again? And that's why she's on the card again. Yeah.
Exactly. There was no way they could have done this card without Molly.
No. I was half expecting them to try and push it to Liverpool, a UFC Liverpool with possibly a Paddy the Baddy main event with Molly as the co-main. Or Till, obviously, because Till was supposed to be on the card as well. But
the problem is there's no venue in Liverpool.
That is the issue.
Because I went to the Echo when they could still do shows there, and that place that like Paddy used to sell that out in Cage Warriors. So when you get all the people who don't know what Cage Warriors are, but they hear the UFC's in town and they're gonna go, like, that place. Getting tickets for that. I mean, you think getting tickets to the O2's hard? Jesus, that'd be insane. Yeah. It's gonna be wicked.
I think that was the idea initially. I remember seeing a couple of tweets saying that they did originally want to go to Liverpool, and yeah, you got your Darren Tills of the world, who is still popular amongst the UK fan base, and he has got a very loyal group of followers who stick by him. But I think his drawing power has slightly fallen off a little bit. You've got Paddy the Baddy, obviously, who's on this card as well, and he could have sold that place 10 times over. But Molly McCann, I think she's really getting the recognition she deserves as an action fighter. Like, when she has the right opponent, her fights are unmissable. And I remember watching her fight back on the London card earlier in the year. The fight itself was brilliant, and the knockout was twice as good. And the whole place went nuts when she won. And especially then when Paddy won later in the night and she came out. Her and Paddy have become this duo now where if they wanted to go back to Liverpool and they wanted to just build an octagon in a park somewhere and have people crowd around them, you could have those two doing a double co-main event against anybody and sell it. So I think, they had to have her on the main card for this one, given how well she's doing. Look, I give out about the UFC fight orders and bout orders more than anyone else on the planet. I don't really have an issue with this. I don't think I can. Look, she, as you were saying, she brings the party. Everyone wants to watch her fight, and it's because she's exciting to watch, and she's a personality in the same way that Paddy is. Not the best in the division, not the best in the world, but let's face it, are the 20,000 people that are going to show up to the arena, are they looking for the best fighters in the world? Yeah, they're looking for exciting fights.
Yeah. Do you think that the kind of Molly is this party going woman and an incredible, well, she's an incredible brawler. Do you think that has been highlighted even more with the emergence of Paddy to the UFC? I think it's hard to say it hasn't, but do you think that kind of her stock would have risen this much without Paddy?
No, they've always gone hand in hand, I feel, because they both have a very similar appeal of, like, you don't need to be into MMA to enjoy watching them just do whatever, like they have that thing, whatever it is, where people who don't care about MMA care about Molly McCann and Paddy Pimblett. So I feel they just help each other. Paddy has always been the one that I guess probably just because he's a bit more mouthy to people, where Molly, I'm sure she is as well. But Paddy's, the guy that usually gets the headlines, and the whole him putting on weight in between fights has become like a huge thing that it seems now. But yeah, they're a double act. It would have felt so wrong without one of them if it was just one of them, because I thought that they were going to put Paddy over in the US after all the stuff he's been doing with Barstool. I thought they were going to put him on like a pay-per-view or something like that, but it would have felt weird having Molly and I'm sure Paddy would have been there and he would have been jumping in the cage anyway. So I suppose it wouldn't have mattered.
I think we'll probably see him move over to the US now that he's on a new deal, because I think this is his first fight on a new deal, isn't it? So I think now that he's on a bigger wage, we might see him get pushed more to the US market. But I do agree. I thought they would try and kind of do that this time round instead of after this.
I think you do need that duo though, because even back on that on the fake UFC London, as I like to call it, back in September 2021, they had Paddy's debut and they had Molly's fight there as well, where she was fighting for her career basically, and they both put on great performances. They were both celebrating for each other, and they just kind of formed into this duo. And they exploded with the London card earlier this year, and now they're out doing interviews on Sky Sports with Gary Neville. You know, like that's your sign you've kind of gone a little bit mainstream, not just on this side of the water, but over in the States as well. And I think we will see them both kind of be pushed further that direction. I think this is a winnable fight for Molly McCann. Like when she's on form, she is a pretty good fighter. She obviously has the holes in her game, and we've seen that in her fights. But all she's got to do is win. And she's, you know, not to be that guy, but like, just win. You know what I mean? Go out and fight, win.
I don't think anyone's kind of looking at her as this potential of being I mean, don't get me wrong, she could easily become a champion, but I don't think anyone's kind of following her for the sole purpose of her possibly becoming a champion. It's just they're following her because of the way she fights, and like Cole said, she's appealing to a mainstream audience, which is something that not a lot of fighters can do.
It's weird how that happens, right? Because I've found it super weird because of following Paddy for so long through Cage Warriors. There's so many things about him exploding in the UFC that I find weird, because it's like, well, like fans of Cage Warriors have been dealing with this for ages. Like this isn't a new thing of people saying, well, Paddy's exciting, but he's never going to be top 15. And, you know, like constantly saying, well, he's never going to do this, never going to do that. People don't seem to say that about Molly. I feel like people are just kind of like accepting that she's a really fun fighter, and that's what she does. And I think, you know, it's pretty, it's not out of the realms of possibility that she'll get close to a title shot one day in the UFC. Like, but that doesn't even seem to be a conversation with Molly. It's kind of like everyone just accepts her as like, put her on a card, she'll get the crowd going with a great fight. Done.
I think that's because she made her debut quite a bit before Paddy did, and she had those fights and she had the losses, and everyone was like, okay,
yeah, I guess so.
It'd be cool if she was good, but everyone kind of wrote her off then. But you know, she's had a little bit of a career resurgence since Paddy has come up, and I don't think that's an accident either. I think there's more support there, and they just bounce off each other. You know, when you watch their interviews together, when you watch them when they're on a card together backstage, you know, that stuff does matter when you're fighting. It really does. And I like you were saying, no one is going to be saying, you know, Molly McCann is the one to dethrone Valentina Shevchenko, because you know, she's not. In any conceivable universe, she's not. But she's there for entertainment purposes now, and I don't think she has a problem with that either, because she is. No. I mean, she's probably on a new contract now after that win back in London and her little stunt with the belt, and because of her friendship with Paddy. So I don't think she's going to be complaining. It makes it seem like I'm really shitting on Molly McCann here. She's a good fighter. She is better than 99% of people. Of women fighting in that weight class who will never make it to the UFC. She would kick most of our asses, right? I can accept that. It's just within this context of the conversation right now about her becoming a serious contender, probably not. No. But this is why she's here. She's on the card. She's not too high up. They're not making her a whole like, oh, look at Molly McCann. She's going to be the one to finally beat Shevchenko. It's like, look at Molly McCann. She's a fucking maniac. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'm excited for this, and I do think she wins. I don't know about a finish. I feel like 2 finishes in a row just doesn't feel right. I think she'll probably have another war in this one. Maybe not as exciting. I don't know. You have the feelings. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
I think I'd be betting on Molly by decision if I was betting on this fight.
Yeah.
So would I.
Yeah, I think that's the safest one. We go from talking about two people, obviously we'll get back to Paddy later on, but go from talking about two people who really bring in a mainstream audience to MMA to a fighter who I think if you're embedded in MMA is like an equal level of excitement, or at least used to be. I don't know where you guys stand on him now, but Alexander Gustafsson fighting in London. It is devastating for me that I'm not going to be there to watch Alex Gustafsson in London. I that is a box that I need to check off at some point to watch Gus live. Fighting Nikita Krylov, who the last time we saw him, he was getting his arm all bendied by Paul Craig. It's a weird fight, and I really don't know how I feel about it. I really want Alexander Gustafsson to win, but I find it really hard to picture it.
This is really uncomfortable for me as a guy who got into MMA quite young, and like I kind of grew up around the stage where Gustafsson was the shit when I started properly watching MMA. Like when I started watching live events, Gustafsson was the shit. He's beating the crap out of John Jones. He was beating everyone else who came through his path. This guy, he had the entertainment value, and he was just so cool. Like he was the guy, and then his career fell off a cliff. And it's like, I really hoped he was going to stay retired after he lost to Anthony Smith. Not because losing to Anthony Smith was a bad thing. Anthony Smith is still a top contender at light heavyweight, so that it's not a bad loss. But Gustafsson really seemed like one of those guys who was on the way out for a little while, even when he was fighting for the title against Jones. It was like, this is his last real shot at the belt. This is his third title shot. If he loses to Jones again, it's not happening. He lost that in pretty convincing fashion. Then he lost to Smith in pretty convincing fashion. I hoped he was done. He left the gloves in Sweden. It was a sad moment. I think I probably teared up when he did it, because Gustafsson, he's one of the guys who in his prime, he would just bring the fight every single time. Then he had a weird heavyweight comeback against Verdum, and I expected prime Gustafsson to come out for some reason. I wrote like a preview thing, and I was saying like, I'm not expecting the best out of Gustafsson here, but I'm expecting him to be better than 40-something-year-old Verdum. I expected the fast hands with like 40 pounds more on him. I thought, he could be a top 15. Verdum just rolled over him. And Verdum is like, he's not good anymore. He's past his best. And so is Gustafsson. Going back down to 205, I don't think is going to do him any favors either. He's going to fight quicker guys who, they're more athletic than the heavyweights. They're probably a little bit more well-rounded than the heavyweights. Krylov is very dangerous on the ground as well. And as sad as it is to say, I think this is the last time we see Gustafsson fight.
I disagree.
Take the floor, my friend.
Because of the announcement that the UFC are looking to go back to Sweden, I think it might be this year, towards the end of this year, which I thought that with a loss here, Gustafsson has to retire. I'm with you, Jake. He was someone that I grew up watching and absolutely loved watching. So for me to be in attendance on Saturday, to be able to watch him fight live, it's going to be like a huge pleasure for me. But I was expecting that, with a loss, he's got to retire here. But then the announcement that they're going back to Sweden this year makes me think that even if he loses, he might do his retirement fight in Sweden, which, fair enough. If he wants to do that, that's completely fair. But is it a good idea? I don't think so. But then you look at, like you've just said, he's come back when he should have retired anyway, a couple of years ago. So is it going to make much difference whether he loses and comes back again? I don't think so. But I can't see him beating Krylov.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say that you think he beats Krylov, and I was thinking,
no.
Look, Gustafsson at his best would mop the floor with Krylov, and that's not because Krylov's a bad fighter. Krylov, he's got holes in his game, but super exciting fighter, very, very underrated. He doesn't get talked about enough as being like a pretty exciting light heavyweight contender, and he's only really lost to the best guys, and I think that's why I was so impressed with Paul Craig when he beat Krylov. But Gustafsson's, he's past it. As sad as it is to say, I don't know how old he is now, but he's old on fight years. He's had two of the best light heavyweight title fights of all time, with John Jones and with DC. He's taken a lot of damage, and I'm not expecting Krylov to go and crack his chin or anything, even though, Rumble definitely cracked his chin, and you have to remember that as well. I'm expecting Krylov to not do what Verdun did, as in just jump on him and take his arm or take his neck or something like that. I think we're going to see a second round, but I think it's going to be uncomfortable to watch an older, slower, uncomfortable Gustafsson in there, who's, it's just like not where he should be. Really.
But let me throw this to you though. If he beats Krylov, which I know it's a really big if, but if he does, what is he on, like a push towards another title shot again? Like what happens? Like,
we'll end up getting the Paul Craig fight that was postponed probably in Sweden.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Like at this point, it makes me sad a little bit, and obviously, I don't want to put Alexander Gustafsson as this like sob story. He's a great fighter, and he could turn it around for all we know. But I'm a huge wrestling fan, and they just announced today that Ric Flair's coming back for another match.
Yeah,
it feels the same thing. Where Gustafsson retiring in Sweden was heartbreaking, but it was the right time. Yeah. And now it feels like we're a bit like, is this final one though? Like actual final now, or what are we doing here?
Because that's why I feel like it could happen though, because he should have retired in Sweden, then came back. I feel like even if he loses this weekend, he'll go back to Sweden and retire in Sweden when he should have already. But
he's had like 2 fake retirements now, so I'm not sure if I'm going to completely buy this one if he does retire. Because he'll probably come back like 3 days later and be like, hey guys, I'm going to fight in Sweden. I'm going to be the co-main event, or I'm going to be the main event. But I don't know. It's one of those feelings where I feel like he's going to lose by finish, and he's just going to leave his gloves in the octagon and just leave. He's not even going to do an interview.
Yeah, I think it might be a bit of a momentum dip, and then we pick straight back up with Paddy the Baddy.
Paddy the Bad.
There you go. Like
I'm not a Pimblett fan. That was weird for me to do.
You've got him energy.
We could talk about Paddy all day. I think the most interesting thing at this point, because we're past the point of how will he do in the UFC. The interesting thing to me is how long does that go, and how much of a step up is Jordan Levitt compared to his previous opponents, and how much further than Jordan Levitt can he go? I think it's pretty, even if you're a fan of Paddy or not, he was a huge favorite for his last 2 fights in the UFC. Where do you guys put this one compared to that one, the previous 2?
I mean, it's a step up. There's no doubt about that. Jordan Levitt isn't no slouch, and he's not just like a fighter that you expect Paddy to just run through. But I do think it is extremely favourable matchmaking for Paddy. Levitt's not someone that packs a punch and that you can see him and testing that chin of Paddy. He's not the type of fighter that's going to do that, which is where Paddy has the question marks. Can he take a big shot? In his first 2, he's been rocked, and there's no denying that. Can Levitt do that? I don't think so. But it is a step up in terms of Levitt does possess kind of ways that he can make it a bit uncomfortable for Paddy.
I think he will, but I mean, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. This could be a bit of a shocker for Paddy and his fans, for a guy who's not going to be in the top 15 discussion anytime soon in Jordan Levitt, and that's no knock on him. It's just where his ability is at right now. Doesn't pack the biggest punch in the world, as you said, and it is a favorable matchup, but it's a guy who's been winning. He's been winning. He's been finding ways to win. You know what I mean? And like, if he goes out and he's really been working on his boxing and he's been continuing, he's been, evolving his wrestling past what it is, then yeah, we could see him put Paddy in some uncomfortable situations, and it could be just one of those fights where at the end of it you go, how did Paddy lose that? It was competitive and Paddy was in some bad situations, but it didn't feel like he was ever in danger of losing. It could just be a weird situation like that. And I'm not saying that's what Jordan Levitt has to go out and do, try and take his head off. It's been proven he's been able to, he's been rocked in the past. But again, it does feel like a little bit of favorable matchmaking because He doesn't pack a big punch. Paddy's very good on the ground. He doesn't get enough credit for that. So if it does go to the ground and Levitt tries to wrestle with him, I can see a submission happening there. So it does feel like a Paddy win, but when people say that Paddy has been exposed for his flaws, this could be the fight where he does, like, there's something serious that is holding him back, or that are going to make people realize, like, okay, maybe he's not ready for top 15. It could be his chin. It could genuinely be his chin. He could take a big shot and go down properly in this fight.
But will that be because he's looking past that threat from Levitt? Because I don't think Levitt's someone that will be able to really test his chin like it has been, or that the answers that we need answering. I don't think Levitt will be able to kind of answer those questions. He just doesn't. He doesn't knock people out. He just doesn't do that. So the questions that we need answering in regards to Paddy, I don't think we're going to find out in this fight. But I do think that it's going to be like an uncomfortable fight. Not uncomfortable in a way that he's going to lose. I still think he might get the decision win. But I don't think it's going to be a fight where he goes out and gets like a first round knockout or a first round submission.
Yeah, I have to agree there. I think this one will go to a decision, and it will kind of halt the momentum on Paddy a little bit, because his detractors will say he's nearly been knocked out in 2 fights in a row from lower level competition. He'll never touch the top 15. His fans will say he's going to go on to win the belt. I'm not a big Paddy guy. Look, skill wise, he's good. He is good. He has shown his striking is good across both his UFC and his Cage Warriors career, and you need to look at his Cage Warriors career to understand where the hype about him does come from. But he has been rocked, and he's not perfect as a fighter. So this will be a little bit tougher, but I think he's more well-rounded than Levitt. Levitt doesn't present the power threat. So if he does get knocked down, and I think he might, I think it's because of his confidence, his overconfidence rather, because of his mindset, because I know he feeds off of it, but like, this is a lot of attention he's been getting for only 2 UFC fights, and we've seen what that can do to fighters. So if he's able to handle all this pressure and all this adoration, all these expectations from fans who are going to this arena to see him, more than likely, and that's no disrespect to Tom Aspinall, and I really doubt there's people there going to see Curtis Blades, but people are going to go to see Paddy Pimblett, Molly McCann go and try and knock someone out. So if he can handle it, then I think maybe he's got a shot at the top 15. Where do we stand on that?
Oh, well, I don't know. I can't see him cracking the top 15 anytime soon.
No, I don't think so. Not at this point in his UFC career. No.
See, it's
really, maybe it's just too early to ask those questions.
And also the top 15 of lightweight. Forget the top 15. The 15 to like 30 is like nearly as stacked. So
who
at the moment,
15 at the moment is Magulov.
Yeah,
who is just like, if you put him in there with Paddy, it's like, just don't bother.
Yeah, I've spoken too soon there. What I mean is, he could be a top 15 in a division where the top 15 isn't Murderer's Row. We'll say that. Because, you have to consider that as well, because, come on, if we put Paddy in there with Ismagulov, who is number 15, Paddy would get killed. And that's not because Paddy is bad. Paddy's a good fighter. And I think if he was still down at 145, I think he'd have more of a shot. But he's too big for that. It's like a miracle every time he cuts to lightweight now at this point. So
the one thing I will say is undeniable about Paddy is that he might have the greatest tapology photo of all time, as I'm looking at it right now. When he's holding the Cage Warriors belt with the thumbs up.
Yeah.
Objection. Makwana Miyakani is better.
Wait,
him with just I think it's just Finnish models next to him.
That's a close
I've seen that,
yeah, that's pretty good. We move on to the co-main event, which should have been, I think, probably maybe the most in-depth conversation we would have been having about where Darren Till is at in his career and how important the fight with Jack Hermansson would have been for him. I almost before the fight got cancelled, I almost didn't want to talk about it in case anything got jinxed because I was so nervous that it was going to go badly for him. But we are saved from having that conversation temporarily by Darren Till having to pull out with an injury, which obviously sucks. I'm sure he'll be on a card later on in the year with Chimaev, depending on how bad the injury is. But we get Chris Curtis stepping in to take his place, which Chris Curtis is on a really good streak right now at middleweight. He only fought, I think it'd be about a month to the date when he steps in there. What do you guys think of this matchup? Because it's weird because this fight doesn't feel like a co-main event without Till. So, but it's a really good middleweight fight at the same time. So I can't look past it.
It is a really good matchup. I really, really do like it. But obviously, the massive downer is that it's not Till, like you just said. It would have answered so many questions that we needed answering of Till's camp and how he's learned from Chimaev. It was a great fight for us to learn about what he's been doing with Chimaev. But then, obviously, unfortunately, he's ended up pulling out. Chris Curtis has kind of saved the day by coming in on a month's notice, like you said. And it's not as if he's just like they've just scraped him out of anywhere. They've picked anyone they can. He is a serious contender.
Yeah.
And if there were questions that we were going to ask of Till and how much he's learned, it's going to be the same for Chris Curtis. It's going to be if he can get through Hermansson, he finds himself in the top 10.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Where do you think Hermansson sits in the division right now? It's a weird one.
Yeah, it is a very weird one. When was the last time he fought? Strickland earlier this year.
Yeah.
And obviously that fight, split decision loss, it didn't go his way. But obviously Strickland has gone on to show that he's one of the better guys in the division. But with Hermansson, it's kind of he's not going to be near the top anytime soon. Even with a win over Chris Curtis, it doesn't really do much for him. It's a bit of a lose-lose situation for Hermansson.
Yeah.
But obviously he didn't want to just like let the fight go because he would have been preparing months and months on end for this.
Yeah.
But it is a bit of a lose-lose situation where even if he does beat Chris Curtis, it doesn't do much for him.
Yeah. We've lost Jake, but I think his internet has completely gone. So we might just be finishing it without him.
That's fine.
So we're finally here at the main event, which again is another one of the reasons I'm so jealous that I'm not in London for. Even though I struggle to see this being a great fight. It's one of those ones where it's a great matchup versus it being a great thing to watch, actually. But just to be there for the potential of a moment that might happen. I am incredibly biased when it comes to UK fighters, UK sport, whatever. So if I had to give you on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Tom Aspinall can win this fight? Whereabouts are you sitting right now? Because I'm about I could probably push myself to a 7 after hearing Sweet Caroline. I'm probably realistically about a 6.5.
I think I'm sitting at about a 7. And that is purely because obviously we know what Curtis Blades is going to come in and do. Yeah. He's not gonna make it a striking match because he'd be an absolute idiot to do that. But let's not say that he's not a good striker because he is. His last win was a knockout over someone like Chris Dorcas, who is an up and coming contender in heavyweights in the heavyweight standpoint. So
yeah,
it's a tough one because you know what Curtis Blades is going to come in and do. It's just whether he's going to be able to do it to Aspinall. And I mean, I love Aspinall. I think he is the UK's best chance of a champion. Yep. I mean, I'd love to say it's Leon Edwards, but I think the heavyweight division's more open than welterweight, which might seem a bit mad to say being as though Ngannou's the champion. But I do think a win here it pretty much puts Aspinall in a total fight.
Yeah.
Maybe he fights the winner of Tuivasa versus Gann, but I don't know.
I think I'm good. If I'm assuming that Cyril Gann beats Tai Tuivasa, which I think that matchup is a lot more favored for one person than this one, right? Yeah. Like I would have probably Cyril Gann at about an 8 in terms of if we were using the same scale. It would be tough to sell Cyril Gann versus Ngannou on the back of him beating Tai Tuivasa. I think Tom Aspinall will be in a great spot for it. So yeah, I think that if he wins this fight, he will be next. Obviously, it's tough because we don't know what John Jones is doing, what Stipe even is doing. That's all up in the air at the moment. But I think if Tom Aspinall wins this fight, he is number one, which is so exciting to say. And I think out of all the heavyweights he could have fought, I think that the other matchups are a lot more favorable for Tom Aspinall than Curtis Blades. But it's almost like the whole like rhetoric of, well, if you can't beat this guy, then you're not deserving to be the champion anyway. If you can't beat Curtis Blades, you're only going to become a champion to then face Curtis Blades. So why not do it now? And I always forget how young Tom Aspinall is in his MMA career. Like, it is crazy because he fights like such a veteran. Like, it seems so weird that he goes into these fights with so less experience than these other guys. But Curtis Blades is like the boogeyman for me in the heavyweight division. I don't like getting excited about anyone who I know is fighting him anytime soon because I'm too worried it's going to get derailed. But I think this is the perfect time for Tom Aspinall to take a fight like this, because I think even if he does lose, I don't think it puts him back too far. And I think it would be a great experience. And if he wins,
I mean, like you've just said, a loss doesn't push him back like exponentially. But if you look at Curtis Blades' last two wins against Rosenstrike and Dorcas, two extremely impressive wins. He is probably the toughest fight other than the champion. Yeah. Especially with the fact that, like I said, he's going to come in and he's going to try and implement his wrestling. So that's going to answer a lot of questions on where Aspinall is on the defensive side of things, because we know his jiu-jitsu is completely underrated. Yeah. But how is he in defending, getting to the ground? Is he going to be able to hold his own in that aspect? And can he keep it on the feet, where he will have a massive advantage because he moves like a middleweight and hits like a heavyweight. So it's like, obviously he wants to fight on the feet, which is what everyone else wants because that's where it's exciting. But there is an aspect of this one where even if it does go to the ground, it could be exciting for us because we could learn that he is very good defensively in his wrestling defense, which then makes it even more exciting, the prospect of him becoming a possible champion.
I feel like this was the same kind of feeling, to an even bigger degree, of when they announced Tyron Woodley versus Leon, where I was like, this is going to be, it doesn't matter what the rest of the card is like. There is a moment where if the right person wins, I say the right person, Curtis Blades is a great fighter, but obviously I want Tom Aspinall to win. If the person in front of his home crowd wins in that main event, that whole room is going to be looking at Tom Aspinall as, you're the next guy. You're the guy that's going to bring another belt back. And that's going to be a special thing. And obviously, like we said, there's a huge chance that Curtis Blades derails that. I think that the atmosphere in the O2 will be absolutely incredible, whether Tom Aspinall loses or not, because we've become a bit more conditioned to the idea that, hey, Tom Aspinall's got time. We're not going straight to the top right away. I think he kind of pumped the brakes himself, didn't he? Like throughout his UFC career so far. But man, I am so excited at the prospect of him winning. That is going to be insane.
I mean, I can't wait to even be in attendance for it. Just the thought of Aspinall sat on top of the cage like he was last time in March, knowing that the next fight could possibly be for the title as well, just makes it, the implications in this one are massive. Even for, like we just said, with Curtis Blades, even if he wins, you could see him leapfrog Gan. Because let's be real, Gan is a favourable matchup against Tuivasa. You can see him getting through Tuivasa.
Yeah.
So even if Blades wins here, you could see him getting the title shot, even though he has had.
Yeah.
Has he fought Ngannou twice? Has he? Blades?
Twice, yeah, and lost both.
So that's where it gets a bit iffy. But I think the first one was his debut, wasn't it? That was his UFC debut. So it is a bit of he has come a long way since then.
Yeah, massively.
So it is going to be extremely interesting to see who could be next.
There you go. That is it for our UFC London preview. Jamie, do you have any pieces coming out this week?
Yeah, I think I've got a few pieces coming out on vmtv.co.uk for the listeners and the viewers. A
And of
couple of
course, you're
previews
gonna
coming out. So yeah,
you're gonna be there, so we'll have to do another episode and catch up with your whole experience, which would be wicked.
100%.
Yeah, make sure you follow VMTV across everything. Subscribe to this channel as well, whether you're listening on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. And we hope you enjoy UFC London as much as we will. Cheers. All right, cool, man. Jake's internet just went, man, which is
That
gutted.
was bizarre. It was literally at the end as well.
I know,
We went through that
gutted,
whole
man.
thing, and then it just went at the end.
I think this is literally about to go as well, so
Yeah,
I'll
I
let you
think
go.
so.
And
All right, sweet,
it's
man.
melting in my room, man.
Yeah. Oh man, it's fucking boiling.
All right, safe. I'll see you in a bit, mate.
Sound, bro. See you in a
Laters.
bit, mate.